Well, and it's a bar full of prostitutes. Like that's one of the main things. The main reason the bar is so full is because people come knowing that there are prostitutes at that bar. Every night I would get off stage and then like get propositioned, and I'd be like, I am not a prostitute.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the DP Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Pinto, and with me today is a singer-songwriter who actually sang on my first contract overseas, which was in Indonesia. And in this episode, we actually discuss a contract that she did about a year or two ago, which was working on a cruise ship. When we talk about everything that goes into that, how you get the gig, basically some of the issues that go down when you're on the gig, because people kind of look at these types of gigs and think, oh, well, you're just visiting all these countries. It's so simple. And it's like, no, there's a lot of drama that comes and a lot of baggage that comes with that. And getting to actually share those special moments with her significant other, which is her boyfriend. And we also talk about her transition from being a background singer to being a solo artist and producing and creating her own music with her boyfriend engineering and also playing on the music. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce Moana Avenatti, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the DP Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Pinto, and double penetrating your ears today with me is Moana Avenatti. She is a freelance musician slash independent artist, so you can check out her music. She's also traveled overseas. She's done a contract with me in Indonesia, and before that, she did one in Abu Dhabi. And she's also a teacher, so if you want to book her for any lessons, she teaches kids, adults, all ages. Like, she's a really good pianist, and she's also a singer, so she can teach you how to do those singing lessons and teach you how to do all that crazy solfege, whatever it may be. And she also has a degree from Berkeley, I believe. Correct. So without further ado, let me introduce Moana Avenatti. What's good?
Hi, Daniel's listeners. Good to be here.
Yeah, so... something I wanted to start with, because we were just talking about it, was like teaching and everything. But before we even talk about that, was we talked about cruise ships and how they compare to the overseas contract gigs. So I kind of just want to start and dive into that, because it was very interesting, because you were telling me that with the cruise ship gig, there's multiple bands playing, and they have one music director that's overseeing the whole thing.
Right. So when we did the hotel gigs, you stay in the one place, and the bandmaster is in the band usually. Ours was the keyboard player, and he decides what's going to be on the repertoire list. He decides kind of when the rehearsals are and everything. On the cruise ship gig, there were at least 5 bands. There's like a big orchestra with like a musical theater kind of show, and then they have guest entertainers coming. It's different every night. And they're backed up by that band. And then we were the acoustic duo. There was like a lounge band that was doing more jazz, like chill stuff.
And who were you playing with at the time for that gig?
My boyfriend, Ananda. Cute, right?
Boom.
Little acoustic duo.
Traveling across the sea together, huh?
Right, that was fun. And then the last band was like a party band. So I feel like there's a lot of different things, but all the bands are in charge of picking the repertoire and stuff. The band director is there to kind of do the schedule and do sets. Like, we have themed sets. So to be like, today just play music from Michael Jackson, or like today just do like love songs under the stars. So yeah, you have someone.
That sounds like a lot of songs you got to know.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like, oh, this specific artist is like, well, we need to have like basically all of its hits, plus on top of that have all the hits that are current to this time, plus jazz, plus this, plus that, everything all around. So just to kind of segue into something is, how do you even get started into that gig? Like, besides the preparation, like how did you even talk about that. What was the steps that it took to prepare for that type of gig that you and your boyfriend had to do, and how'd you even get in contact? Because what cruise line was it, if you want to mention them?
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you get in contact with them? How did you two get to be together on this gig? Did you sell yourselves together, or what was the process?
Well, so I've been meaning to try a cruise gig for years, and it's actually how I got the one with you in Indonesia, because I was telling all my friends that I knew that were musicians, being like, I'm going to get on a cruise gig. I'm going to get on a cruise gig. I'm going to audition soon. I just need to make a tape. And then Josh heard me and was like, why don't you do one in a hotel with me instead? That way you don't have to like move around so much. And I was like, okay. And the one I got in Abu Dhabi before that, same thing. I was telling all my friends, and this keyboard player was like, hey, I remember you said you wanted to travel and stuff. The singer's contract just ended. Do you want to come and like take over the spot? So I feel like a lot of it was just me reaching out, telling people that I wanted to do it. And then I had another duo that I knew, which is also boyfriend and girlfriends. And they did very similar things to our music. And I reached out to them and I was like, hey, how did you get in touch with the cruise ships? They put us in touch with a few agents. I reached out to other friends that also were on cruise ships and asked about their agents. And we basically made a video as a duo. So yes, we sold ourselves together, doing as many styles as we could because we knew that was a big requirement. And then a few agents got back in touch, and it's not exclusive, so they can kind of like ship you to wherever. And then one of them had a contract that actually was what we wanted. We were a year prior, we were like, wouldn't it be cool if next summer we're like in the Mediterranean doing music? And then this agent was like, hey, are you free this summer in the Mediterranean? And we were like, yes. So, yeah.
Man, sometimes it just works out that way.
Yeah,
You put it out
just
into the universe.
Right. You just have to like bother people so much with what you want that like someone remembers you next time it comes up.
Mm-hmm. And so what did it, when you got that gig, what were the requirements? Like, what were they asking from you? Because you said, oh, I had to do a Michael Jackson gig. So did they just send you a bunch of songs, or did you say, hey, this is what we know, and they said, we'll add this to it? But how did it go about once you guys made contact?
So before we started, part of the audition, you had to send a video and you had to send a song list. And it had to be at least 300 songs, if I remember correctly. So they kind of know what they're working with before you get on the ship. And then when you get on it, you give them their updated version, because usually you learn more songs. And then the bandmaster made sets based on that. So he was like, you have a lot of Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder stuff, so I'll make sets about that. And then there's some that he had suggestions. It was never too forceful, being like, learn these songs. But he was like, a lot of people here are this age group, and these are the like artists they like. So if you're looking to add more stuff, I would look into this. They were big on requests. And I mean, we kind of ended up being big on requests because that's how you get tips. So added.
You guys were making good tips then, huh?
Not all the time. It's not into European culture. So like for part of the cruise, we had a lot of European guests on the ship, and they don't tip in Europe most of the time, so it didn't come naturally. But then towards the end, there were a lot of Americans on the ship, and tipping is so like crucial here that we did get more. But it was also nice just adding songs that they liked, because when our guests request a song, it's most likely going to be the same song that other people are into. So that's kind of how we made our repertoire fit the age category that we had. So yeah, we were adding songs all the time based on requests. But it was not necessarily the bandmaster being like, you have to learn these songs, because you have to show up on the ship having a certain amount of songs that you already know.
And then so now that you have these songs, and that's super cool that the music director is just like, okay, I'm going to work to your strengths instead of being like, well, you need to know this or that. It seems like you had a pretty loose guy to what I would think is a more strict version, I
don't know about that. He was strict in a lot of ways and not so flexible for other things that I didn't think made too much sense. But it was his first time being a band director, or a band master, it was called. But because it was a prerequisite to know this many songs and this like these different styles to be the acoustic duo, because they need the acoustic duo to be versatile, because sometimes you have to play high energy stuff and sometimes it's very like mellow. So I feel like just because of that, they have to work with what you have, because it's not like you show up with nothing and they have to mold you. It's like, hey, we already had gigs before,
Right. And that's good too, because they want experience. But so Something that caught my attention when we were talking earlier was, or before the podcast started, is the fact that you said you guys were playing 5 times a day, every day. Because when we were in Indonesia, which was the typical thing, is you have like 3 or 4 sets at night with a break in between, and that's it. You have the whole day to yourself. And you usually have 1 or 2 days off, depending on the contract. But you have mandatory days off. But with cruise ship, when you signed the contract, they said, "Hey, like you're gonna be working every day or whenever they need you, like on call, basically." So what was that like when you signed it? Were you like, "Oh, whatever, like it's gonna be whatever. They'll just have us play at night," and then it's like, well, no, they're gonna have us play breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, whatever else they can make up. Yo, midnight, 3 a.m. Let's do it. We're doing fireworks.
Maybe not 3 a.m. but yes, it was very interesting because I know that every company works differently and every ship within the company works differently. So they make the contract super broad. They say that they're not required to give you a day off. It's not a law that would apply to you, the United States, even though it's an American company. You're in the middle of the ocean, so it's like it's not as bad for musicians as it is for everybody else on the ship because they literally have no days off, and it's like a 9-month contract where they're just working 16-hour days nonstop. For musicians, it's at the discretion of the bandmaster. So everybody told me before I went, put him on your good side. Like he's gonna be the person deciding whether or not you work a lot. We had a few altercations at the beginning, so that was not a great start.
Mind to elaborate a little bit, huh?
They were supposed to have a cabin for us to stay in together. And when we arrived, they were like, well, the DJ has been here for longer and he wanted to be in the same cabin as his girlfriend, so we gave them your cabin.
What? Yeah, no, that happens, though. That happens.
And, we had traveled, I don't know, for like 2 days straight, hadn't slept. And we get in this office and he's like, you're going to have to play soon. But just so you know, like your roommate is on the night shift and she's at guest relations. So not even like in the entertainment department. So you're not going to be with the other musicians. And I'm like, what? Why? I didn't it wouldn't even get into my brain that they would do that, And I was like, but no, that's not okay. Like, you can't do this to us. And he's like, well, I am doing it. I don't have a choice. The ship is full. And this is what it is. So we were sharing with 2 roommates. My roommate was on the night shift. So basically I had to be quiet when I was not playing. I couldn't really be in my room practicing when we were supposed to add songs. So
wow,
that created some tension, I want to say. I tried to keep it professional, but without the sleep, I got a little mad.
Hey, having worked with you, I can already see it. Yo, I already see it.
It's funny because
I feel bad for your boyfriend. He's like, he's stuck in a room with a she-devil.
Okay, no, I was nice to him, not so much to the bandmaster, and I do regret it.
I can see him in the corner just kind of being scared.
I mean, I was happy to be with him, so it's not like, he had to take so much. It was just really hard for us because we wouldn't sleep enough. Our roommates would come out in the middle of the night finishing their shifts and like showering, getting ready. It's like, you can't sleep. It's like you're sharing a tiny space with a person. And so we would go and do one shift and then come back and sleep for an hour and do another one. So our sleep schedule made no sense. Also, they were going through a weird time with the ship when they were trying new things. So instead of having a schedule for the whole week or for there were different cruises every time. Like every time new guests would come on, it was a different cruise technically. And the rest of the ship had their schedule for the month in advance. Our boss insisted on giving us the schedule the night before, after midnight. So that means we had to stay up after midnight to know if we were playing the next breakfast set. So like if he put it at like 1 a.m, then we had to wait till 1 to know that we were playing the next morning, so you wouldn't get enough sleep and stuff.
That's annoying.
It was just not well organized, I want to say. But it is because they were trying something new. I guess they were like trying to shift the program around. I know it's not like that.
Experimental bunnies.
I think so. I don't like. I was talking to the other musicians on the ship, and they're like, "It's not always like this. We just happen to be there at the bad time."
Mm-hmm. I remember you mentioning that you guys also had to do the crew like drills and stuff, which is interesting because I remember back when I was maybe 19, I did a gig with an older guy who said, "Man, you should do cruise ship gigs, but one thing that's annoying is they treat you like you're one of the crewmates instead of a musician."
So I heard that a lot actually from most of my friends who did cruise ship gigs, and they were all so annoyed by it. And I think most companies actually require more of you than the one we had. So that was one of the benefits. Um, in our case, you usually get like long contracts. Ours was fairly short, so we had a lot of trainings for the amount of time we were there. But if we had stayed longer, it would have made more of a difference, I think. So the first few weeks, you have trainings in the morning when they're just teaching you stuff about their company. It's more because you don't have a training before you get on the board. So like, hey, this is what we do. We have this many ships. This is the values we believe in, and more of like being a good employee, I guess. And then you have some security stuff because they're like, if the ship goes down, you need to be able to know first how to save yourself. But like, if people come to you running, they'll see you as like a celebrity infinity person, and they'll be like, help me out. And you can just be like, you're on your own, dude. So
that makes
part,
sense.
Yeah, that part made sense to me. We had to do one drill every cruise, every new cruise. And at first, when we got there, the cruises were 1 week long, so we had to do one every week, and that was getting a bit annoying. But the whole boat has to do it, even the guests. So it's not like it's just the crew. Like we all had to know where we would go if there was a problem. It was not tragic. I just had to scan people in, and then towards the end, the cruises started getting longer, so it was every 2 weeks. So not too bad. And it's not like taking up your whole day. It's like an hour every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad because like you just got to get with the program.
Yeah. And I'm like, it makes sense, like there are accidents and you don't want to be there being like, oh, I wish I had known how to survive.
But the food and everything else was good. I mean, one thing is the locations where you were stopping at. It's probably like, hey, because I saw some of the pictures on Instagram and it was gorgeous. I was like, yo, that's the spot right there.
It was amazing. So yeah, the gig was a bit exhausting because of the scheduling thing I was mentioning. Like you didn't really know in advance when you were going to play, so it's not like you could plan when you would do certain things. But as soon as we got off the ship, those places, we were in the Mediterranean. So it was like Italy, and we stopped in Israel, in France. We did also the Adriatic Sea. So we had like Croatia, Slovenia, Greece. Oh my God, Greece.
Yeah, Greece is
Spain,
the place.
like Malta. We stopped a lot at Malta because our ship was registered there. So that was definitely great. The food is included in your gig, I guess. So you can have either eating with the crew below deck, but you're also allowed to use like the buffet of the main guests. So we ate there a lot. But being in the Caribbean, being in the Mediterranean, we also spend a lot of our salary eating outside the ship.
Oh, dang. Okay.
You're in Italy and Greece. Like, you're not going to
like,
eat
let's
the
go
ship
eat at
food.
the nice place.
Yeah, even though the ship food, especially the guest buffet, was totally great, we wanted to be like on the beach at like a small restaurant eating the fresh seafood. And that was the best part of the gig by
and you're with
far.
your boyfriend.
Exactly.
You want to do the romantic thing.
I know.
You wanted to do everything.
Like in Greece, looking at the see-through water, and you're like, oh, life is so tough right now.
You're like, this gig doesn't seem that bad, even though I have to play it in an hour.
But I like playing music, so I feel like, it should all be positive. I think those gigs overseas always get tiring when you do it too much. Like if you have 5 sets a day and it's spread out throughout the day, so you don't really know what to do with yourself in the 2 hours in between each, that gets tiring, especially if you haven't had a day off in like 2 weeks. We did get days off every 2 weeks, like one. But you do get tired, but you enjoy playing because also we played a lot of the sail away sets. So it's like, or the sunset sets, and you're at the back of the ship outside, and you have these crazy sunset over Italy, and I'm like, I could play music here all day, So,
and I feel that way about pretty much every contract I've ever done is like the actual playing of the music. And what's funny? I just watched The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary. I just watched it on Netflix recently. Really great documentary. I highly recommend it. But something Dennis Rodman said was like, I'll play a game of basketball for free, but they pay me for all the bullshit I got to deal with, all the paparazzi, all the drama.
So
and I was just thinking right now, as we're talking about this contract, I'm like, man, I completely understand what he means, because
that's literally it. Yeah, they pay you for having to do meetings I feel like big companies in general will have this stuff when they just need all employees to go through the same thing. So you have meetings that you're like, I have literally no reason why I should be at this meeting, but it's just a mandatory thing for everybody. It doesn't even apply to musicians, but they just want you to be aware of what everybody else has to do. So yeah, you're right. I feel like that's what you're being paid for.
And I mean, I feel like there's just so much drama that goes down because I'm thinking about the contract we did and just like how much like they kind of like push on you the fact that they want you to drink with the guests or party with the guests, be this kind of like thing, you know. It's like, hey, that was never in the contract, but it's like what comes with it. There's this whole environment and culture that's kind of toxic. I'm not gonna say kind of, it is toxic.
It was challenging, that contract in Indonesia, for that, because you play in a club where, first of all, they're allowed to smoke. So you have to be there in between.
And have prostitutes?
Well, prostitutes are not like a detriment to my health. But if I'm a singer having to sing for 5 hours a night and I have to speak loudly, and it's super loud too, in between sets, they want you to talk to the guests. But you're in an environment full of smoke where you have to like speak super loud. I would lose my voice all the time. That was tiring, and they were like, yeah, but that's part of the gig. So I remember I used to walk around with like a few of you, so you would do the talking and I would just be there smiling, so I wouldn't be like just the only person that could talk to someone, I guess. And then like Josh and you were always like, oh, she's trying not to speak so much, so like hand signals and stuff, so that was helpful. But that was definitely, again, the tiring part of the gig. Like being on stage is one thing, but all the stuff around it is.
Or when they buy us all shots and they bring them on stage and it's like, well, I can't drink it. And then I'm like, well, it's okay.
Right.
I'll be a gentleman and I'll take it for you, Moana. Don't worry. I'll take all the free shots.
I don't really like what alcohol does to me. I feel very like antisocial and tired. And the taste. And then the next day I just feel like, I don't know, I've been hit by a bus. So I don't drink. And I remember telling that to the people at that gig, and they were like, that's going to be your problem. So they made this thing where they told the bartender that every time a shot was being sent to me, it had to be guava juice, because they asked me what juice I liked. And they would just charge the person like it was a normal shot. And I was like, first of all, that's shady. But I guess it does make everybody happy because you're not being rude, refusing a shot from someone.
They get their money and you get your guava juice.
Yeah, but then that became a problem too, because I would get so much guava juice and I'm trying to sing and I'm like, I don't want to get reflux as I'm singing.
Oh yeah, that's not fun. No, you're like.
Yeah, so I mean, it was not tragic. It's not like, oh my God, I had to drink guava juice for my gig. But a few of the times they wouldn't know too. They would just get like general shots for the whole band. So I would just give it to you or Josh. And then Josh was like, I can't have another shot if you want me to keep playing straight. Like, I feel like it was harder on you guys for that.
No, it is what it is. I think reflecting, we had a lot of fun. I mean, as we're talking about it, I'm thinking about all the shenanigans we got away with. Like, so Moana was the singer on this contract in Indonesia that we did. And sometimes she'd be like, oh, Josh, can I play my bass? Because she was sponsored by Daisy Rock Guitars at the time. I don't know if you still are.
No.
Not anymore, but at the time she was. So she's like, oh, let me just get some videos of me doing it or playing bass and doing my thing. And so she would be playing bass on a song and Josh would be singing.
Yeah, that's
true. Or
and I feel like the audience liked that too. It's not just like, oh, we want this. It's just like, oh my God, they're switching around, and they were so happy.
Yeah, exactly. Or Chris would get on drums and
or Chris would pick up the guitar sometimes and do like a solo, like just acoustic song.
Redemption song. Yes, by Bob Marley. But so we would do all kinds of things like that, or talk to the people to the right of us because there was a little space.
That's true.
I remember one time, your shoe or your high heel went flying out into the crowd.
Oh my God!
And it hit somebody in the head. I just remembered that. Yeah,
I did not remember that.
Yeah,
so funny.
So there were a bunch of those types of shenanigans that we got away with, because I feel, at least I do, I don't know, I haven't really talked about this, but when I'm here in the US, I feel like I'm a civilized person. I'm just doing my thing. As soon as I go overseas, it's like, yo, we're in the Wild West. There are no rules out here.
So
it's Westworld. Like, we out here, and I just like, I'll be wilding out just doing whatever, and we'll see really crazy things go on, and it kind of like validates that we're in this crazy land.
Right. That's funny. I'm from overseas, so I feel like wherever I go, I am overseas, you know, in a way. But it's definitely different wherever you go. They have like different customs and different rules. And it's interesting to see what you think is wilding out in one country is not in another. And then something that you think is like the most normal thing is not. Like, for example, in Abu Dhabi, the band and I used to always play Uno during the breaks. And at some point, we were playing at this lounge venue thing. And I forgot why, but they needed the stage for something in between our gigs. So we left the lounge and went in the lobby of the main hotel. And we played Uno there. And like all the security guys just jumped at us. And we were like, what did we do? Are we not supposed to be here? I was like,
They wanted to play?
no, they're like, it's gambling. It's illegal.
Oh.
And you were like, but it's a kid's game. It literally says like 6 and plus. And they were like, how can you do this? You know, this is like prostitution here. It's like completely not okay. Like they were offended. And just seeing their faces about, you know, colorful cards, it just took us so long to even realize what they were talking about. I was like, maybe we're not allowed to sit in the lobby. Like maybe we're not dressed properly. I don't know what it is. So it was just hilarious getting in trouble for playing Uno. And
So they had no idea what Uno was, though.
I'm sure they've seen it, but they were like, this is not okay here, you know, like people might go crazy. So, you know, that was their version of wilding out. And then it's a country when you're not allowed to drink most places, but you're allowed if it's an international hotel. So like in the hotel, you could drink if you were in the lounge. So it was just funny being like reprimanded for playing Uno here. And then we walked like 30 seconds to the bar where everybody was just doing drugs and drinking.
And it's funny that you say that because it was a lot easier for me to go to a liquor store and get illegal alcohol in Abu Dhabi. Way easier than it was in Dubai. Dubai, it was like I had to call a guy. It was like getting illegal drugs.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's like getting illegal drugs in Dubai. But in Abu Dhabi, it was like getting illegal drugs, but like in a more safe way, I would say.
Yeah, so I feel like every country has their version of what going crazy is. I usually get a little star tattoo every time I do one of these gigs or like I travel somewhere new. And Abu Dhabi was the one place where I couldn't do it because they were like, we can find you a tattoo artist. It's going to be in Dubai. We're going to drive an hour and then you'll go in someone's basement. I know this underground guy. I was like, I am not doing this. So I got it in Indonesia, actually. I just waited a few months and did it instead.
Yeah, I remember you getting it in Indonesia.
But yeah, it's funny, like what you think wilding out is, you know, if throwing your shoe at someone's face. I didn't throw the shoe; it slipped.
Yeah, it slipped. It definitely slipped. When there were memes made about this, for sure.
I totally forgot. Yeah, the like Cinderella thing.
Exactly.
I seem to remember too. It was a guy who had really been wanting to talk to me, so he was all happy to bring me my Cinderella shoe.
He was like, oh, now it's like a movie in this dingy dive bar filled with prostitutes, alcohol, and probably some coke in the back for all we know.
Oh, there was a lot going on in the back.
Yeah, man. The back was where like the filthiest of the filthy went.
There
was no lights back there.
It was a little scary. I'm glad there were a lot of big guys in the band so I could walk around with like my fake bodyguards.
Hey, the security they had were big dudes, but they never did like jack shit for us. Like, so yeah, we were way better security than they were for you.
Yeah, I remember they were saying like, don't let anyone get on stage. If anyone tries to like stop you, like they'll come and push you, and then it didn't happen. So like Josh, for example, a few times had to be like, yo, you're not touching the singers.
Who made it rain money on Jay? You know, like that type of stuff, and like.
Well, and it's a bar full of prostitutes. Like that's one of the main things. The main reason the bar is so full is because people come knowing that there are prostitutes at that bar. And so the culture there was that any woman in there was a prostitute, was for sale. So every night, Jay maybe a little bit less because she was with her husband.
And Jay was the other singer and her husband was Dev, the music director.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. But every night I would get off stage and then like get propositioned and I'd be like, I am not a prostitute.
Yeah, that's true. You would. Yeah. And every guy was hitting on you and Jay. Like,
sure.
And Jay would go to her room, obviously, and you would kind of hang out. Like, I remember there was time. So they had this bar that you would go into as soon as you get in. You would go into like this kind of like loungy area, which had foosball. Mm-hmm. And then you'd go downstairs and you could check in. Right, and then that was like the actual bar,
right?
And there was restrooms to the right, and then after the bar, there was an actual dining area, which turned into the bar at night. But I remember that was one of the things we did a lot. Like you, me, Josh, like Chris, everybody basically in the band at one point was playing like that, and
foosball, for
that
sure.
yeah, and that kind of helped ease that tension for at least a minute, and especially because when you were feeling uncomfortable, you'd be like, "Hey, Daniel or Josh or whoever, maybe can we play because this is not the vibe."
And at least you're still in the bar too, so it's not like they can be like, "Yo, where were you during the break?" It's like, yeah, still in the bar in a separate area where like less people would come. But yeah, the culture in the bar was not the most woman friendly, I want to say. Not so much because of the hotel's owners. I think it was just like the kind of clientele that was there
Yeah,
did not understand boundaries very well.
I completely agree with that. But something that you mentioned earlier was like, oh, I'm from overseas, so everything it feels overseas to me. But let's just talk about the origins of that because I know that your parents have an interesting story. Well, if you want to even talk about like where you're from, like where you're born, and then if you want to talk about that backstory about them.
Sounds good. So I was born on the French side of a very small island called Saint Martin. It's in the Caribbean. It's also half Dutch, but the Dutch side is like its own. They speak English on the Dutch side. It's the smallest island split into with like so many nationalities and cultures there. That's why I feel like I'm always overseas because even there you could be a stranger, like depending on what neighborhood you're in.
Interesting.
So yeah, I was born there. I grew up on a sailboat until I was 6 because my parents are nuts. Pretty much.
No, they were. You know what? People do crazy things when they're in love.
Yeah, it's so in their 30s, my dad somehow convinced my mom in Geneva, in Switzerland, to sell everything she had. They didn't have much, and buy a sailboat. So with the little they had, they bought a very small sailboat, and they crossed the Atlantic on their sailboat by themselves.
But they went to Portugal to get.
Yeah. So they bought the boat in Switzerland, but there's no ocean in Switzerland. So they had to like go to the nearest country in Europe that could reach the water. And they sailed down, which I think is crazy because my mom had spent some time in Kenya years before and she almost drowned. So she was terrified of the water and the waves. And she met this musician dude that was like, you know what we should do is sail to the Caribbean.
She met like this lion. This man of a lion said, "Oh, this is my leader. I'm the lioness. Take me to the promised land. Take me to Pride Rock."
I don't know what happened. And it's so funny too because nowadays, every time I take one of those gigs.
Wait, was your mom already pregnant with you at this time?
No.
So you were made on the boat, maybe?
Well, later on, like they spent 2 years in St. Martin,
okay.
and then I was born. So
They're like, we're not gonna have a kid ruin this yet.
No, it was funny too. Like I think they were just like in their 30s, being like, we're adults. We've done the adult thing. Let's do one crazy adventure. I don't know if they ever meant to stay.
Did they have any experience sailing whatsoever? Actually,
That's what's funny, right? It's like I don't know to what extent. I know my dad was sailing like on lakes and stuff. I don't know how much he was on oceans. That's why I was like, it's crazy that you trusted him to do this. Especially back then, it's not like, you had GPS and like radios that worked. You were in the ocean by yourself.
yeah, in a little sailboat, and that's why I'm like, yo, this dude, like, he was like, yo, I have a mission, I have a plan. I got the love of my life. Let's go. I want to live on an island.
I don't know if it was so much of a plan as like, we need to do this before we're too old to do it. And then they arrived in Guadeloupe on the day that my dad had planned. So my mom was really impressed. Like, he used the stars and stuff. And he was like...
That's impressive.
Right?
Yo, this dude, like...
So she was like, I think they had been together for like 5 years at that point. But she was like, okay, if we survive this experience, we're good. So they were in Guadeloupe for a while and they like sailed around the Caribbean with whatever they had saved. They would fish to eat, do like odd jobs here and there. And then they ran out of money. And my dad had a friend in St. Martin that just happened to be there. He was like, hey, they speak French here. My parents are from the French side of Switzerland. Well, my dad is half Italian, but that's another story. And they were like, they speak the same language here. And I know a bunch of people, so maybe I could get you a job. So my dad got like this construction job. And then after a while, my mom got a job. And they were like, well, I guess we could stay here for a while. And then my dad was like, hey, we've been here for 2 years. Want to have a baby? And here I am.
Boom.
And they never left. They're still there.
Yeah, they're still there. That's pretty chill, man. That's a pretty awesome story. Like your dad just sounds like the MVP over here. Like, hey man, I don't even need the spotlight. I'm just doing my thing.
Yeah, it's so funny. I feel like it's such like a hippie thing for them to do. And it's so funny now that they're older. And every time I get one of those gigs and like, I'm very impulsive and just jump on occasions, you know, like, hey, do you want to do this in a week? And I'm like, yeah. And my mom every time is like, oh my God, like, how do you not stress out? Like, where did you get this like adventurous gene? I'm like, you're serious?
You sleep with him.
I was like, both of you got here somehow. Like, there was no way I would have turned out any other way having you as parents. Like,
it sounds like she was just like soaking up the sun while your dad was just like doing everything. Like, I got it, baby. Don't worry. And it's like throwing a spear like 100 yards and like hitting a dolphin. And like, he's like, oh man, like my bad.
No, they were both working very hard. In fact, my dad is a big sentimental guy. He doesn't show it at all, but he loves animals very much. And so my mom was telling me that when you cross the Atlantic, you can't really fish because there's no small fish because there's no like corals and stuff. So there's only huge fish and they're like deeper down. So you can't fish for a while. And once you start getting closer to the land again, you can start smelling it in the air. You start seeing birds, and that means there's going to be fish below. So they started fishing, and the first fish they caught, I don't remember what species it is, but it's basically a breed that mates for life with another fish.
Like a seahorse type thing?
I honestly have no idea. But I wasn't there. But my mom keeps telling me that like they got this fish finally after like a month of sailing. It's like fresh food, you know, you're like, you want to eat it? And my dad was like, no, we have to let it go because he's going to leave another fish heartbroken. And my mom was like, you crazy person, you're going to feed. Like, and so she had to kill the fish. And apparently she was so angry that like my dad was trying to put the fish back in the water. And she's like, we are eating. Like, we're not dying over a fish love story. So I know she worked hard.
Well, that just shows me that she was hungry.
Yeah.
She was like, hey, I'm tired of your bullshit. That was cute back in Switzerland, but out here in the cut, nah, it ain't working.
It's funny too because like then they started a shirt business after a few years in St. Martin. Like my dad is a big artist. He does music, he paints, he does graphic design. So he designs these shirts, and my mom sells them. But since I was a kid, my mom has been my dad's boss. Like he works for her company. So I feel like it probably started with that fish when she was like, oh, you're not going to do it? Okay, I'm in now. And like, you'll do the fun, like pretty stuff and artistic, beautiful. And then she's like, you know,
yeah,
I'll do the grunt work. You do the fun things.
Yeah, she does. She's the one that's like, I'll do all the paperwork, all the hard managed stuff. It's like you do the stuff that actually sells, and I'll actually sell it.
Exactly. So he gets to be the artist, and she manages.
So do you give your dad a lot of credit for inspiring you musically because he's the musician in the family? Did he kind of introduce you to that? For
sure. Actually, both of them are musicians. It's just my dad is a professional. My mom does it for fun. But she plays piano way better than I can. She's in a choir. I give both of them credit because my mom always sang harmonies to me when I was a baby. And she loves telling the story. My grandparents like telling the story too. But I was always singing before I could talk. So they used to like walk me around for tourists in St. Martin apparently, and like tourists would stop and just listen to this baby sing. So weird. So I was definitely singing first because of her, and then when we were on the sailboat, my dad would have jam sessions a lot of times on like the deck of our boat.
Jesus, see, your dad just, the more you talk about your dad, the more I'm like, yo, I need to meet this dude.
He's pretty cool.
Even Josh has told me stuff about him that I'm like, yo,
Josh loves him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, he sounds like he's the guy, man.
He's very funny. But yeah, we had all these jam sessions on the boat, so I was always surrounded by music. And then he was in bands all the time, and every other year he would like completely switch genres. So like one day he was in a salsa band, samba, reggae, rock, funk. Like it was always there. There was always music playing in the house.
But what did he play specifically? Or did he sing or
guitar and bass? He was singing sometimes. He was usually not the lead singer, but like sometimes
background vocals.
Yeah, he sang lead on a few things, but his main thing was bass and guitar. And my mom sang background vocals for one of his bands. Then he started, I think he wanted to get better at bass because he was more of a guitar player. He started taking lessons from this guy who went to Berkeley. And he reached out to me he came to me, my dad, and was like, "Hey, start taking lessons with this guy. I know he also teaches piano. Would you be interested?" Because he tried to teach me guitar when I was a kid and basically gave up right away. He's like, "I'm not a teacher. I don't have the patience for this. Your fingers are small. I'm going to get annoyed." He got me a guitar and was like, "Deal with it." So yeah, at some point he was like, "Do you want to take lessons from this guy?" So it was a big influence for him to just be like, "I already take lessons. Why don't you take lessons?" I thought it was like a good lesson that you could be a professional musician and still be taking lessons. So that helped. And then yeah, my mom plays piano every morning, so it's just like that made me want to
So
play.
were you gigging at all, like in your teens? Like what? So you were gigging in St.
With
Martin?
my dad.
Oh, with your dad. Okay, so then that was already giving you like, getting your feet wet.
For sure.
And so then, at one point, were you saying, "Hey, you know what? I want to go to Berkeley, go to Boston, study music." Was it like, I want to take this to the next level, or get some contacts, or just open my mind, or did it just start like, "Hey, I just want to study. I'm not necessarily thinking about making it a career"?
I think it evolved a lot as it went, but I started a band with my dad when I was 16, and then one when I was 18, and I did a summer program at Berkeley because that music teacher, bass player, piano teacher, went to Berkeley and basically went and talked to my dad and was like, she should try at Berkeley at least. Like, I think she'd be a good fit for it. I see the way she thinks about music and the way she practices, and I feel like, if she really applied herself, she could be doing well there. So they saved up. I did a summer program and I loved it. But then I took a year off after high school. Just, I wanted to have work experience. I wanted to like really know what it was like to have different careers, because I had been gigging for a while. So I was like, I could, if I become a professional musician, that will be all I do. Whereas if I do something else, I could keep gigging. So I guess I wanted to explore options. So I did a bunch of gigs and random jobs. And I auditioned for Berkeley during that time. I also applied for architecture and biology.
Oh, snap. Yeah. You're like, either I'm going to make money or I'm going to make no money. Yes or yes?
I don't know. I just like, it's just, I had really good grades in high school, and all my teachers were getting mad at my parents for even letting me consider doing music for college. And so it got to my head where I was like, if they're so against it, maybe there's something to it. I was like, I mean, I already have gigs and I'm still in high school. So like, clearly there's a way to make money from this. I don't know what you're talking about. But it was definitely a big decision. And, they were like, well, you have good grades in science. Like, it's so rare, especially coming from St. Martin, where it's like, it's not the best for school, I guess. A lot of teachers go there because they want to surf. So like, you get a lot of classes
You get
canceled.
the very chill vibe, like, hey, yo, the waves are up. Like, we don't need class.
Literally, like, sometimes we'd be like, oh, your math teacher's not coming, he's sick. And then you would go surfing and see him on the spot. And you're like, oh, how are you feeling? So, yeah, it was a big decision. But my parents were like, do whatever you want. So that helped a lot. And then I got accepted to all three. Berkeley was the last one to respond. So I was about to go and study biology. I was like a week away from leaving to France, which I didn't want to do. I was not happy about it. And then I got this email from Berkeley being like, you're accepted. And I was like, oh what?
Everything's changed. Like, yo.
And I was like, well, great. So he kind of made that decision for me. And at first I applied, and then my parents were like, well, okay, I don't really know how we're going to make this happen. Because like, if you went to, yeah, because St. Martin being French, you go to the French system for school, so you can go to France for free. Like, the whole higher education is free. In fact, they help you with your rent. It's like being a student in France is amazing.
Yeah, I would go. I would do that.
Exactly.
Like, to me, it sounds like, oh, it's free. Like, why not?
Exactly. So I think that also is why I was considering biology and architecture a little bit more. Like, it seemed more feasible. But my dad was like, let me try something. So he talked to his mom, and he was like, I know you said that there's no like heritage money from when my dad died, but I'm just going to put it out there that like Moana would like to go to this school, and it's a school I always wanted to go to, and she got accepted, and teachers really liked her when she did the summer program, and I feel like it's a little sad that she can't go there. And then my grandmother was like, well, there is some money, just not a lot. And we were kind of waiting to give it to you later when you retire. She's like, it's not enough to pay for her bachelor's at all, but we could probably do like a year. So my dad was like, take it for what it is. Go for a year, have the most fun you can, make as many contacts as you can, like, but do it seriously. Like, work hard, get as much away from it as you can.
And see, something I've talked. Sorry to interrupt,
No,
Luana, but
absolutely.
just something I've talked about in the past podcast is about the different level of students at Musicians Institute, and how like the foreign students, for the most part, some of them would be like rich Korean or Asian, you know, just Asian in general, and Asia in general, and they would put in so much more effort. Like,
Right.
it was like everything, and just I'm like, oh, here's one case of this one person and everything it was taking for them to fly to America, to go to Boston, to go to music school. Like,
Right.
the amount of effort. So it's like, that's what's at stake versus an American student's like, well,
And
whatever.
You know
I
how
guess
the
I'll do
system
music.
works too. Like, even your health insurance and stuff. Like, being in America, you already have your parents that can help you with that stuff. It's a lot when you arrive and you have to learn how a country works. You know, it's like,
Right.
here's how you apply for like a phone bill.
Had you been to America prior?
Yeah, my cousin lived in
Or the U.S., I should say?
California. Right. My cousin lived in California when I was 9. We visited her, and then I had done the summer program at Berkeley the year before. But yeah, I thought I was coming to do a year, so I got every job on campus I could get. I insisted. I was trying to get on the stage crew so I could learn how to like do sound and lights for free instead of having to pay for a class. Or actually, more than
That's
for
smart.
free, like they pay you for it.
Yeah.
I bothered the stage manager all the time. I was like, my roommate's in it. I promise I'll work hard. He was like, but you don't know how to do sound. Like, why would I hire you? I was like, I don't know. I work hard. And then I kept calling.
You
and he
weaseled
was-
your way in. That's
Yeah,
what you be
he
doing.
would-
You weasel your way into everything. Like, you'd be like, oh, you're saying like, oh, I just keep mentioning it. It's like, no, you weasel your way in.
Right.
You
No,
try-
exactly. Like, you have to
mentioned
tell
it
people
to the
what
right
you want.
people.
And at some point he called, he was like, okay, I'll give you a chance. You can be on the stage crew because like you just have to like set up drums and mics. Like, that's not hard. And then we train people on doing sound in the rooms anyway, so you'll learn how to do sound. And from that, I worked so hard that he promoted me. So I became like a supervisor. And then when I graduated, he hired me as a stage manager. So I was like, you know, sometimes it's hard to like work extra hard for that stuff. But yeah, I had a bunch of jobs. I was doing like photography for some of their events and stuff. And then my second semester, I got a scholarship. So like, I was like, well, now that I...
Full ride or just...
No, not full ride, but still like a substantial amount.
Nice.
So that thing that I thought I was going to last 1 year between having a bunch of my own jobs and scholarships, I was talking to my parents and I'm like, I don't know, what do you think? Should I do an extra semester? And they were like, well, you know, you haven't been living at home for a year, so like we had that like little less expense. So they were like, let us put a little bit of money towards that too. So I don't know how, but I graduated. I did summer semesters because they were cheaper. I transferred some credits. I did some stuff to like test out of classes so I wouldn't have to take it. And yeah, I did.
That's hard
I
work.
did my bachelor's. Like, I don't know how
And
it
how
happened.
long did it take?
3 years, I think.
Oh, early. Look at you go.
Yeah, because I did summer semesters. Like, I was dedicated. Yeah, 3 years. 2009, 2011 is when I finished.
What do you think? Like, I've asked this to people. Plenty of people who've gone to MI. I haven't talked to too many people that have gone to Berkeley. But did you feel that it was worth it? Like everything. Do you think the money's worth it, or do you think you putting in that extra effort made it worth it? Or how would you describe your experience there? Do you think, oh, well, the teachers weren't that great, or these teachers were amazing, or the classes could have been better here?
Right.
What did you think of the overall program, or the location, the students?
It was a lot to take in. I feel like it's definitely what you make of it. The opportunities are definitely there. It's just so many that it's overwhelming. Like, they have.
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah, absolutely.
That exact thing that you said perfectly describes how everyone feels, I think.
Yeah.
Including myself.
Because, okay, I got there and I spoke St. Martin English, which is a highly simplified version of what my legal aspects teacher was speaking. So I had so much to acclimatize to that at first I feel like I wasn't taking advantage of all the opportunities because I was just trying to catch up, you know? Show up and like all these amazing talented musicians are there and I was like, oh, I thought I was good, but like they already know so much. I know nothing. I don't know what I'm doing. And just figuring out like how to read a lease in English with like all the technical terms, or like how phone bills work. Like I got way overcharged because I didn't understand how like call international, because it didn't work the same way as it did back home. Like everything was taking me so much more time that like someone would be here.
And you didn't have anyone to say, "Hey,
No,
let me
exactly.
give
It's
you a
not like I
letting
had my
hand."
parents. No, and
Yeah,
it's not
you're
like,
on your own.
Yeah. So I feel like that first year, it was not like anything on Berkeley. It was just like, whoa, just so much in your face. And then the more time I spent there, the more I realized that I had been missing out on all these like extracurricular activities. You can sign up for so many shows. You can sign up for extra recitals. You can go to teachers' office hours that are not your teachers. And their teachers at Berkeley are fantastic. I mean, I'm sure there's some that are less fantastic. But you can choose your teachers. So I had a great experience with my teachers. And I felt bad that it took me so long to realize all that was available, especially because I rushed through it. I did it in 3 years. I didn't have time. Like some people were taking like half part-time semesters so they could really like digest the material. I feel like I wish I had had more money just to really digest what I was learning.
Well, not only that, have more of a social life, which is part of the reason that you
Yeah.
want to be there and connect with these people, because
For
you don't
sure.
know where they're, because as they move up or you move up, you might need them, they need you, etc. As like you said, you like mentioning things to these musicians, it's like it's gonna catch someone's ear, and then they'll be like, well,
Absolutely.
Moana wants to work on this,
Yeah.
let me put her on this, or vice versa. You know what? I think we can do this together.
No, for sure. Like the networking is huge. And they told us the first day we sat and we had like this big meeting in the recital hall, and they were like, look at the person next to you. They're most likely going to be like at the top of the music industry in 10 years. And I know it's hard for you to fathom that at this point, but like make sure you nurture these relationships, not only because it will keep you mentally healthy while you're going through like such an intense experience of like working so hard on your schoolwork and on your art, but also because it might give you a job later. And it's so true. Like every time I
That's
watch
good
the
advice.
Grammy or whatever, I see someone that I went to school with. You're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
whoa.
Well, yeah, we were watching. So last night, like my girlfriend is watching the Jessie J show, and like I see my friend Mateus Asado on stage playing guitar, and I'm like, oh, that's Mateus, and he's
Yeah.
like, what? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah.
For
I
sure.
remember.
It's funny. He actually was at the school I was teaching at in India, like the semester before.
I remember me and your boyfriend had a nice conversation about that. He was telling me some the deeper details to it. Anyways, unless you want to go into whatever, yeah.
No, it's fine. But yeah, it's funny. Like I feel like the music world seems so big before you're in the industry, and then once you're in it, you realize how it's always the same people. Like I go to Indonesia, and I saw some people that knew someone from St. Bart's. Like we met these musicians that were on tour and came. I went to India, and then the school I was teaching at had Mateus, which knew a lot of my friends. And then there was this band coming on tour, and it was like my friend's boyfriend that I met while at Berkeley. Like, I feel like I can go anywhere in the world, and like these musicians I met in Boston like years ago are still like
Oh,
haunting
I completely agree. I met people that I met like in other bands in Bahrain that I ended up meeting again in China, or even
So
one of them
funny.
I apparently met, but I was so drunk I don't remember. But when I met him, he was like, "Oh, we met before."
me. That's so funny.
And then we actually replaced his band when we were in Dubai. Like when his band was moving to another place, we were the band that was coming in.
Nice.
So I had already met him without really well, not at that point, yeah.
And I feel like being in LA also does a lot of that, because you meet musicians here that do stuff and then they go outside. But
Yep.
the people we met in Indonesia, I met here again, and we're like, hey, nice
Yeah.
to see you all around the world.
Or you watch like the MCs and you'll see like someone like on guitar or something,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just like the musician community is way smaller than you think.
For sure.
But you mentioning the whole India contract, that's where you met your boyfriend. He's from India. So you were teaching him a little bit more than music theory. But anyways,
He was not my student.
oh, he was teaching you. Oh,
No,
you
no,
were
no.
the student. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, he
The
used
Kama
to, like,
Sutra, No,
no,
I'm just kidding. I'm
come
kidding.
on.
You're like, come on. I already knew it. No, it's okay, Moana.
Your
It's
dad,
okay.
Daniel. Your dad. Oh.
But so how did you even get that gig? Because I remember you telling me like how you were saying, "Oh, I want to do this." Like when you were talking about the cruise ship gig that you ended up doing with your boyfriend. I remember you talking about like how you wanted to do that, and you wanted to teach overseas, and you ended up doing it as well. How did you even come about doing that gig, and how was that experience?
Dude, it was so funny. I think, again, like me telling people what I want to do, but I was touring as a background singer with a rock band for a while. And I had just stopped because I was exhausting. I was teaching so much. I was teaching in college at the time. I was teaching at California College of Music. And touring 4 days a week. Like we would go far and then come back. And I was tired. So I stopped that. And after a few months, I was starting to tell people, I start to have that itch again, or like, I want to go on tour somewhere. I need to like get moving.
Get out of the country.
And I literally, the same day, I was telling people that I got a random text on WhatsApp, and I totally thought it was a scam. It was like, "Hi, my name is Mervin. I work at this school in India. Would you like to teach here?" And they like ignored the text. I was like, "This is not even real. Like, it just sounds like a scam. And like, how do you even find me?" And then he texts me again. He's like, "Your friend Francisco recommended you because he says he teaches with you at California College of Music, and we're actually affiliated with another school he works at, which is Los Angeles College of Music."
Going back to the, small world, everything's small.
Exactly. And I had just told Francisco that I was missing doing stuff. So he thought of me because we were in an Indian ensemble back at Berkeley. And I had referred Francisco to the California College of Music gig. So it was kind of like his way of giving back.
Yeah, I feel it.
And he was like, "I wanted to go, but my green card is like processing, so I can't go. So I thought of you because you like Indian stuff, clearly, because we were in that Indian ensemble, and I know you want to like travel." So yeah, they were like, it's for a full semester. You'd have to teach vocal technique, theory, an elective you want. We recommend songwriting, and then some ensembles. And I was like, I've never taught ensembles. I'll do it. It was like, what can happen?
Like full ensemble, like you have to, oversee a whole band. Okay.
So that was the part that terrified me. Like all the others, I had like sight singing and all, and like you can prepare for those, but like you never know what a musician's going to throw at you during an ensemble. And it turned out it was my favorite class. It was so fun. I knew more than I realized, which was great. I love putting myself in these weird gigs where I think I'm not good enough, because that's when you like either you have to like step up and learn a new skill, or realize you had it all along and it was just hidden. So yeah, I showed up in these ensembles and it was so fun. Like we decided songs together. We had to do like little shows once in a while. At first I played bass in my first ensemble because they had no bass player. And then someone was like, "Hey, I noticed you don't have a bass player. Could I play in the band, but not for credit?" And I'm still dating him.
So he had an ulterior motive.
I don't know. He wanted to play bass, and I like bass very much. So I guess it worked.
He knows how to slap the bass. Anyways, not
you're so inappropriate on your own podcast.
Yeah, we got to spice it up a little bit. But how did you deal with the culture and the and the food, which is a part of the culture? Because was there any conflict? I'm sure there was a lot of beauty in it. I'm sure it was you saw some beautiful things. But one thing I've said to people is like, it's one thing to visit a country and it's another thing to live in it. And you were living in it. So what were things that you got along with, or different things, or stuff that maybe someone like me, who's, even though I've traveled, I wouldn't know, or just the listener?
It's so true what you said. Like living in it makes a big difference, because all the gigs I had that were several months, I feel like the first 2 months was me exploring and like being like, "Oh my God, this is awesome."
Yeah.
And after the second month, consistently you get hit with like all the bad stuff from it. And I feel like you need to stay a little bit longer to go back to like an average. You do both extremes. And in all of my gigs, I always left at the point where I was like, okay, it's time to go home. Like, so it's nice because then you appreciate your home better. But for India, it was not so much India that was difficult as much as the place we were. It was a campus that was 2 hours away from the main cities. There was one in the south and one in the north. And it was completely far away from everything, and their point being was that students could only focus on their studies. They wouldn't be distracted, which is a great concept, because musicians really like, it was a tight knit. Us teachers and the students, we were all together making music all the time, even outside of classes. It was like a very good community, and the people there were amazing. People came from all over to this school, and it had a big international teachers appeal. So every teacher came from a different country. So like people wise, it was amazing. We had amazing conversations. We would get introduced to so many styles of music. As teachers, we could take classes from the traditional Indian teachers. So I learned so much about rhythm and stuff. That was great. And
right. Yeah. Because
so
for
challenging.
For people listening, if you're not musically inclined, it's more, here in the U.S. we have mostly, or in Western music, it's mostly 4/4, while in India they have all types of different rhythms and everything. And
Right.
I've even heard, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard in India that when they teach you, you have to learn all the rhythms and be able to play every rhythm before you can even touch your instrument.
Yep, exactly. And it's same for singing. You have to learn like all the scales and developing relative pitch to a point that like whatever note you sing, you know exactly what like scale it is at any point. So even when you're improvising, you're supposed to improvise using the words of the scale. Before you're allowed to learn songs. And it's same thing. Before you can learn a percussion instrument, you're supposed to learn like all the takadimis and stuff. For traditional music, not just because you're in India. If you want to learn rock, then you just learn rock. But if you want to learn that traditional music, so super challenging. Like I got in the first class and he was like, if you take 96 beats, how many time signatures can we fit in there? So it's like the first time you're going to do it in like a dotted eighth, but then the second measure, you keep the same amount of beats, which is like a 3 plus a 9 plus a 7. But this time you're actually only an eighth, not a dotted eighth. And then the next time you do it a quarter note. And I was just, what? And like literally every beat they would remember by heart what time signature it was until you got to that 96. Like,
everybody's a drummer.
Yeah, like such a big cycle, you know. And I was like, my mind was blown. So that was
that
amazing.
Does sound intense. Yeah, that sounds like repetition and a lot of
they
practice.
start as kids, and that's why also like the guru mentality is so strong in India. Is like when you have a teacher in India, it's not like someone you see once a week. Like you're all day with them for years from a young age and you grow up with them. So it's almost like an extra parent. Like our teacher for rhythm was telling us, like, you know, I'm closer to my teacher than to my dad because I spent my whole childhood at his house learning rhythm, you know?
Right. Yeah. They're a real mentor, very like
absolutely.
the Obi-Wan Jedi type
yeah,
thing.
really.
Yeah.
And which explains like why they're so skilled at this thing that like you can't just show up in your 20s and expect to get a grasp of it immediately. And we were in the south, so lots of temples, colorful temples. Like every street corner had a temple. So that was like beautiful, and colorful saris everywhere. Like there's a lot of poverty. A lot of people live on the street. And it's so interesting seeing the contrast. Where like here, when you see someone homeless, there's such a like stigma to it. Like dirty gray clothes, probably smells bad. And you see someone in India that's homeless and like colorful saris, hair made all the time, sometimes like fake gold jewelry, like just presenting themselves because that's all they've known. So it's not like they're going to live badly thinking, oh, I'm less than. It's like, this is their life. So they show up. And I thought that was amazing.
Interesting. It's a different way of like perceiving yourself.
Yeah, I thought so.
But something I wanted to touch on, because we're hitting it over an hour, is yourself as an artist, because lately in recent time, as you've been really putting out your own music, and do you just want to talk about that? Because, you know, as far as I know, most of the time when I knew you, it was as a background singer or accompanying somebody, or even when you toured, you were like a background singer, or you were always in the background, or, you know, you weren't the front woman for this project. So what gave you the confidence to finally be like, you know what, at this point in my life, I'm ready to make that jump and put my own music out there instead of trying to write music for someone to buy or whatever it may be?
I think you really touched on it. Like, I didn't want to be the front person at all. I had a crowdfunding campaign when I left Berkeley and made my own album, and then moved here and started doing my own shows, and I hated it. And like at the same time, I started being a background singer.
But why did you hate it? Just from having to manage it, or just being in front of people?
Both. Like seeing the contrast. Like on weekends, I would go and be a background singer for this band and have so much fun, and then I'd had my show, and I'd be so stressed out, and I was thinking about how I sang it, if I had taught the musicians the part right, if I had printed the thing, if they were going to be on time, if I had like forgotten something because I was in charge, how the people reacted to my songs, because it was my songs, you know, so it's more pressure. So I was like, maybe it's not for me. I can be a musician and be in the background. Start learning bass, thinking, you know, the bass players are always in the background. No one bothers them, but they're still doing the music. And I started thinking about writing music for sync, so synchronization to like TV, ads and stuff, because I thought if I'm a songwriter, I don't have to release my music. I can just like get these songs placed and still make money from it and have like a normal career without having to be that front person. But that turned into some songs getting picked up, and they were like more and more people wanted to get songs that were by artists, not sync artists. And they were like, you should put your name on it. And I started that earlier this year. I was like, you know, I'll release this song because if they look me up and realize that I haven't released stuff in the last 10 years, they'll think it's like a fake project. And then I had a nice response, and it was not as stressful as 7 years ago. It was like, it was a different kind of music too, and I was more confident, and I feel like I've progressed too. I made progress too, so like personality wise and singing wise. So I started releasing songs. Not all of them. Like I have 60 songs unreleased right now that are just waiting to be synced. But I don't know. Like I didn't mean to be my own artist again, but I released stuff and it went well. And then some stuff got placed, so we released it because we thought, you know what, if someone Shazams it while it's on the TV show, and I don't think it's going anywhere. And then I started a project with my boyfriend where we started doing our originals, and that also got the attention of some music supervisors to the point where like, hey, we can do this. And I know having that confidence now that like people liking it also made me want to do it again somehow. I don't know. It was nice.
Before the podcast started, you asked me like, "Oh, what made you want to start a podcast?" And I was telling you like, you know, I've always wanted to do some sort of talking show, whether it's like playing over games or just talking with friends or some sort of discussion over a topic or just how we're doing now, right? And I told you I didn't feel I was at that point. I don't feel like I knew people at the time. I don't feel I had that place right now. And now I feel I'm ready and I can go forth with this idea and really go 100 with it. And I feel that's that's the point you are in your life when it comes to being an independent artist and writing your own music. You're like, hey, now I have these ideas. I want to do it. I want to go 100% in. This is where I am in my life.
And not being alone doing it too. Because when I started doing like these songs, I was like, oh, it's okay. It's still a bit scary that it's just me. But now that we started doing stuff as Moananda, which is me and Ananda, I don't like the fact that it's not just, hey, look at me, I'm Moana, and this is what I do. And like, you're not the front person, because all of a sudden you're like a duo thing, and you can have that image of like, look at our band instead of look at me as a singer. It took the pressure off somehow. And now I'm like, yeah, totally want to do.
Did he influence that a lot? Was he saying, hey, you know what? Why don't you do your own music? You're spending so much time on this. Why don't you do that? Was he a big factor in kind of pushing you in that direction?
I was doing these songs before I met him, so it wouldn't be fair to say that he encouraged it, but he was always super supportive of like, he played on that first song I released in January, he played bass.
And I mean, you can plug those songs in if you want to talk about, you know, because this has all been happening within a year, right? Which is very fast, and you're getting a lot of attention. So do you want to talk about like what songs have made it on what programs? I mean, it's
sure. There's some that I can't talk about yet.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
But we had a song with a friend of mine called Stefan. We placed a song called She Is Fire on MTV's show Siesta Key. And then we got in a workout video that is not released yet, so I can't say much about it. It might get on another TV show soon, but I'm waiting till I sign the paperwork.
Yeah, it's all fake business until you sign a contract.
Exactly. But yeah, and like we still, and even now with Moananda, not just with like those songs I did with my friends, some songs got picked up by supervisors, and same, we're just waiting for the projects to go through.
Okay. So with that being said, this has been an episode of the DP podcast, but before we go, Moana, do you want to plug yourself, your Instagram, Twitter,
Sure.
how to find you on iTunes or Spotify, whatever you're on?
So on Spotify, you can either look Moana A, Moana, and then an extra A afterwards, or Moananda, which is a duo I was talking about, and that's Moanaanda. It's like Moananda.
Okay.
It's not easy to spell, but think of like Moana and Ananda. Yeah, we have a few songs on there, so you can find that on all streaming platforms. I'm on Instagram at Moana A Music or Moananda Music, and everything is Moana A or Moananda. So,
and the song to look up would be "She Is Fire."
She Is Fire.
And I know you have other songs that I've heard from you.
Oh yeah, we keep releasing songs every month, so just go on the Spotifys of the world.
Well, thanks, Moana. Appreciate you being on the
Daniel.
podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
You too.